My name is Hannah. I live in Madison, Wisconsin. I am 32 years old and I was diagnosed when I was 30, but um, I have a yellow lab, I have a husband, we have a house, so we spend a lot of time on house projects. Looking back, I really dug through all of my chart like visit summaries and everything. And I don't know what's all connected, but I really had some dull pelvic cramping. Sometimes it was sharp, but it was so like brief that like it wasn't alarming to me. Um, and like the regular cramping was so dull, again, it wasn't alarming. That all started honestly probably in like 2014, 2015. I kind of like noticed that about my body and started to go to the doctor some more. Um, then around like 2021, 2022, I had a lot more of that spotting. I started to get a lot of reoccurring UTIs, which I never had before. Usually, like my friends who had a lot of UTIs, it was like something they always like dealt with. Sometimes I had really bad UTI symptoms, but it wasn't a UTI when I like tested for it. So I just started to notice like things were off. And I kept going to the doctor. They kept telling me I'm young, healthy, sent me back home. Even family and friends like were like, no, you're probably fine. No one took me really seriously. And then it was like August of 2022. I started peeing like a lot of blood, and that was really alarming to me. I was like, I've never had blood with my urine, and again, it was just kind of like, no, that's a normal symptom of a UTI, it's fine. But it like they gave me antibiotics, it went away like very quickly. So again, nothing really serious there, or taken seriously. And I noticed a lot of bloating as well. Like my arms just seemed puffy, like I just seemed inflamed. Um, so that all, like, I think I gained like 5 pounds or something, but I kind of chalked it up to like, hey, maybe I'm not working out as much, like it should be fine, but I just kind of knew something felt wrong. So that was August with that bad UTI. So then it was December, the beginning of December, where I was like, again, like I'm just like uncomfy down there, pelvic stuff going on, light spotting, like I don't feel like this is normal. I'm at an appointment at like 8 a.m. on a Friday and I get my blood pressure checked and it was 158 over 105, which they're like, that's very high. And all my past blood pressures, no, like nothing was like high or concerning. It was always in the normal, healthy range. So they're like, oh, it's okay. Like family, like it can run in the family. It's very genetic. There's a thing called white coat syndrome where you're like nervous around doctors that your blood pressure could just be up. And I'm like, it's 8 a.m. in the morning. I'm tired. Like, I'm fine. I feel calm. Like, they're like, well, just give it a break. And they tested again, high again. So then they just sent me home. So then I like kept testing my blood pressure through the weekend. It was that Sunday where I was like, hey, before the work week, I'm just gonna go to urgent care and see if they can do some labs because I don't want to have to like deal with taking off work during the week and everything. I just kind of want answers because my blood pressure is still high as I'm taking it from home. So I'm waiting in at urgent care, and triage comes and gets me, and they're like, we're just gonna check your vitals, but we're gonna send you back to the waiting room. And at this time, my blood pressure was 176 over 125, and he's like, "Holy crap! Like, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I think I am. Like, I don't know." And he's like, this is alarming. And he's like, we are not putting you back in the waiting room. In fact, I'm going to have the doctor come right in here. And he's like, I'm very upset, not at you, but at your doctors that they just told you, hey, go ahead and have a great weekend. Like, he's like, this is ER level, like, blood pressure rates. Um, Doctor came in, asked me where pain was. I kind of pointed to like right lower quadrant of my abs, and he's like, okay, I think this is appendicitis. We don't do that here, so I'm gonna have you go to the ER and they'll likely do surgery. They did a CT of my chest and my pelvis, and we're just hanging out. We're thinking maybe it's just like a ovarian cyst or something, and maybe it's nothing. And they came back, and the doctor's like, hey, there was a mass, and it really looks like it's like your appendix. It's really big. This could be, I can't remember what he said, but something about like a calcium buildup or something. He's like, it could be just that. Um, yeah, like we don't know what it is, but hey, there's a mass. It could be cancer. We kind of waited there more, and as like they were talking, it was like, okay, we really think this is cancer, that it's spread, there's multiple places. And actually we found out the mass was, one of them was on my right ureter, so that's why I was having all the UTI symptoms, because it was blocking my kidney to drain, from draining into my bladder, so it was creating a lot of stress there and like infection. So they're like, we think we're gonna go to surgery right away for you. I didn't get in with a surgeon until like the 15th of December. So I spent like 2 weeks just at home panicking. Like, do I have cancer? Like, what is this? What's happening to me? Am I okay? And I met with the surgeon. He said, we really think that it's appendix cancer, but there's low, I think it's called LAM, which is like low grade and like can be taken care of easy. But he's like, with the spread and everything, I really think it's stage 4. It wasn't until the end of December that I finally got a diagnosis. So it was like midday on a weekday. I was working from home, and I just remember I was seeing like test result email, and I opened it up, and I was alongside my current husband, but he, again, fiance at the time, and it read something, and I don't even want to like try to pronounce it because I'll butcher it, but like basically stage 4 appendix cancer, with mucus, and it said signet cell ring features, but I took that as signet cell. I didn't know what the word features meant, so I googled it, and it was like 7% to 13% 5-year survival rate for prognosis, and I just like, my world shattered at that moment, and just crying. I had so many questions. I didn't know what this means. I finally was able to meet with my surgeon again. He brought in a medical oncologist too at that time. And I was like so ready for this appointment, because I'm like, okay, I'm finally gonna have like a timeline and like the treatment, and like a lot of my questions are gonna be answered. Well, it did not answer any of my questions really, and it just made me way more confused. They're like, we could do the surgery route right away, but if we do that, you're going to create all this scar tissue, and it's a really hard surgery that requires multiple months to like a year of recovery. So there's a risk that if we do that first, um, then like you won't be able to do surgery later because of all the scar tissue. So then we decided to get a second opinion, which at first I was very like anti second opinion, but after that appointment, I was more anti, just because I'm like, let's get rid of it right away, like let's go. And like my local hospital is like pretty well known, but not up there. Um, and so we consulted with a appendix cancer specialist at Mayo Clinic, which I learned is very important with appendix cancer, because it's like 1 in a million that you get diagnosed with it. Um, so we got a second opinion, and he's just like, this is the protocol, this is what we follow, this is what works. You're young and you're healthy, like you're gonna get through this. And he explained to us too that the signet cell features meant 50% of it showed signet cell, so it's not a full-on signet cell. And signet cell is like very high grade. So that was like promising news as well. So right when we got done with that call, I'm like, he's my guy, he's our guy. Like, we will travel to Mayo Clinic to do surgery. He did agree that their protocol was like, so chemo usually is 12 rounds of chemo or 6 months. So it was recommended to do some in the beginning just to kind of keep it stabilized and like reduce it if it could, and then go into surgery. So I did 5 rounds before surgery. It was FOLFOX, which they use for colon cancer because appendix cancer is so rare. They don't have like a drug regimen just tailored to appendix cancer. And my second round of chemo, they added a drug called Avastin. So um, symptoms or like side effects I had from chemo was a little bit of neuropathy, sensitive, like cold touch, kind of tingling, like your fingers are falling asleep. Also, cramping in my hands. It's kind of like when you ride a bike for like a long period of time or you grip something for a long period of time, like your hands just kind of feel stiff. A hoarseness in my voice developed. It was winter at that time, so also when I went outside, it was like I couldn't almost like breathe from like breathing in the cold air. Like anything cold was very sensitive. And I just remember being like totally wiped out. I stayed working full time during all of it because I just wanted to be um, like normal, like have my normal life. Had my surgery, I had time off for work to recover because you have to relearn how to like digest food. Your intestines, it was a 12-hour surgery. They open you up from like your rib cage all the way down to like your pelvic bone, one big incision, and they open you up and essentially take out all your organs and like comb through all of them and just make sure there's like no tumor anywhere. They had to like take off the diseased part of my ureter and put it back onto my bladder. Um, and I didn't know at this time like what all they were gonna remove. But I woke up and they did tell me that they removed my ovaries and my uterus. We didn't have any kids prior, so that was like a big kind of surprise. I knew it was a risk, but that was kind of hard to deal with because now I have to start taking estrogen to not go into early menopause. They did another procedure where they like removed part of my colon. It's called like a hemicolectomy or something like that. They said there was a chance that I could wake up and have a colostomy bag, and I was really paranoid and scared about that. Obviously, for like superficial reasons, I just didn't want that. And like also dealing with my neph tube that had to stay in and that was constantly attached to me. So I just didn't want one more thing attached to me. With my chemo treatment too, they send you home with like this ball. It's like a bolus ball that attaches to my port. And it runs for 46 hours. So I had that attached to me with this little like crossbody bag and then also my neph tube. So I just had all the things attached. I did wake up with a catheter as well, and that was super uncomfortable. I had that for about 2 weeks. And then I had to keep my neph tube and a stent in my ureter for 6 weeks after surgery. So I stayed in the hospital about a week, came home, had 2 months off of work, and I was just pretty much couch ridden. I had like 15 medications at home to take. And so my husband like put together a spreadsheet and was responsible for all my meds because it was just a lot. So I was just trying to develop like strength and my appetite and digestion again. I remember eating like a yogurt in a day was like a huge, like, it was like worth celebrating if I could finish a yogurt in one day. Like, I just like couldn't get any food down comfortably. And like, even just like walking down the street in my neighborhood was like a feat. Like, it was a huge challenge. So I was just really withered down. And, I just slowly, like, I started pushing myself to walk in the hospital right away. My sister and husband kind of cheered me on to just like walk down to like the desk and then walk back to my bed and try to do that every like 4 hours or so, just to like get me up and my body like moving. Movement actually like really helps in the recovery process. So whenever you can do that, it's really needed. They did do genetic testing and something called molecular profiling. So the molecular profiling looks at like the tumor in your DNA and it notes if there's any like mutations, because they do have certain like immunotherapy and things like targeted to these mutations. So I did find out that I had one called KRAS G12V, and that my medical oncologist said maybe look into that one for the future if you needed anything. Um, and then the genetic testing like showed if it was hereditary or not, and it wasn't. They said like nothing you did caused this. It just like your DNA just went fluke and just started like replicating at a certain point. And there's no way to really like know at what point your body started developing this, but they said usually it's about like a 10-year slowly progressing process. But they have, I mean, there's no way to really like show that necessarily, but that kind of like aligns with like when I started to go to the doctor more, like looking at all my medical records. They did do a minimal residual disease test, or MRD. It's a newer test. It draws your blood and then it reviews your blood for any circulating cancer cells. So that kind of is a good measurement after surgery. Like, he visibly was able to remove everything he saw, so I was deemed cancer free. But just like a follow up, looking at my blood, like let's look at that and see. And it was negative, so that meant I didn't have any cancer cells. Again, it's a newer test, it's not perfect. I know a lot of people that have a negative result and they do have a reoccurrence. So I think they're still trying to work out the kinks, but it's just a good data point to have. They also retested me my CAA level, and that came back 1.7, so it's under the 5, so I was in the normal range. So after surgery, I was like, hey, I'm cancer free, like I'm good, like finally the end is near. And they're like, nope, you only did 5 rounds of chemo out of the 12, and so we really want you to finish up your rounds. So after I healed from surgery, I had to start chemo again. And did not feel great about that, because I'm like, I'm feeling great, I'm cancer free. Like, chemo just is so toxic and it like is just horrible to go through. So I wasn't very supportive in it, but everybody's like, do it. What's aggressive? Like, it's cleanup. If there's anything left over, just do it. Like, once you're done with this, you're like good. So I finally did that. It was like the end of October of 2023 when I got done. We had a really great wedding, June 29th of 2024. So that was great. Just before the wedding, though, I had a scan in April and they saw a small spot in my lung. So they said, it's growing, it's under 1 centimeter, so we're not going to biopsy it, but we really think it's cancer. we think that is just a cell that was left behind in surgery that grew. So I did 5 rounds of radiation, and that only took me from like the end of May to early June, where they just I was under essentially like a CT scan, and they just used like a laser. And the appointment takes about like 20 minutes. So I had like 3 in 1 week and 2 in another, and I was done. So it was very easy. Radiation was like the easiest treatment I've ever had. 5 rounds wasn't a lot. I didn't really have symptoms. And then they just did a follow up chest CT a couple weeks ago actually, and they saw a couple more spots that are growing on the same lung. So now I think I'm having like another reoccurrence. I think with this, like when you feel like your life is like maybe gonna end, like I'm terminal, it really puts into perspective like your life and like what impact have I had on this world, and will people remember me? Like, am I just gonna be like a lost memory? And through all of that, it just like really empowered me to like live today, make the most out of today, like show love, like communicate, like be vulnerable. So I think as like those deep and like sad moments, me and my husband had those times where we just cried, holding each other. But like there's those like, flower delivery or like a text, a really thoughtful text or whatever it may be that just like re-sparked your drive and like your empowerment to like keep fighting, keep moving forward. And just having like the support group of like the appendix cancer group also, because it was so isolating hearing you're 1 in a million and you're rare and they don't know how to treat this, that to find others around the world that had the same diagnosis as you was like the best data that you can have and like advice that you can have. And like, because the wait time to hear back from your doctor, half the time is just like a nurse responding to you, even if you reach directly out to your doctor. So to have those like patients that can like reply right away and tell you like their advice or like who to contact or like their experience was like a huge help and made me not feel like 1 in a million isolated on this island. It was like, okay, we're like a group together going through this as well. I would just say do your research. You're your own advocate. So you really need to educate yourself. Like, if you have any friends or family in the medical field, reach out to them. If you can find support groups for your specific like symptoms, or if you know your diagnosis, like go to that. That's huge. And just get second opinions and really understand like all the different roads you can go down to like get treatment or help with something, because like nobody's gonna fight for you as like you would for yourself, and you're really in control and in charge. Like, I know you feel probably weak or alone going through this, but like you have the power and you have the control as much as you can, right? Like, you can't cure your own cancer necessarily, but like if you don't push and if you don't educate and if you don't do any of that, like your outcome could change like tremendously.